Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our class today with Guy Finley. This is Sunday, November 5th, 2023. Welcome to all of you in the room and all of you out there in Cyberland. We're glad you joined us today. If you're not familiar with our classes, Guy gives about a 60-minute talk. We take a 5-minute break, and then we come back for about 25 minutes or so of questions and answers. And that'll be about an hour and a half. At that time, we'll keep the cameras rolling, and the people in the room can come up after that, and you can stay here with us and join us as you wish. But that's our format for today, and we hope that you participate with us. And the way that you do that online is to just go to our chat box or the GoToWebinar control box and put in a question. And if you're on GoToWebinar, you can ask Guy a question directly on audio on your end, and you'll be able to speak directly with Guy. And I can't stress enough how important that is, not only for you, but for everybody, because your question is something that everyone probably else would have an interest in as well. So do take the leap and join us in participating in that part of our class today. And again, if you have any technical problems online, just go to the question box or chat box and we'll help you back there, over there with you. Katie will be there to help you however she can with any technical problems. So do take advantage of that if you need it. All right. If you're in the room, please turn off your cell phones if you have one. Make sure your cell phone is off now, and then we'll go ahead and get started. I'm going to read the topic and the key lesson. How to transform painful questions about life into healing answers. And the key lesson reads, our highest possibility for spiritual growth can't be separated from our daily work to question, explore, and illuminate any dark thoughts and feelings that may confront us along the way. A fearless life awaits anyone who will cast off from the shores of the known and who will remain set on that celestial course called self-knowledge.
Hello and welcome everyone in the room and from wherever you are joining us around the world. Always glad that we still have this time to study the things that most of us take no time out in our lives at all to study. Just to cut to the chase, how many of you are still asking questions about where you can find the healing that you know you need in your heart and mind? Yes or no? I hope you brought your best brain with you today. It doesn't look that promising from where I'm seated. But that never stops us, does it? We don't need the best brain, we need a willing mind, a heart that's open and agreeable with whatever the lessons are that comes along. And our study today is going to be dedicated to presenting to you almost as if in a book that opens with the ending and that ends with the opening, that makes a full circle so that you can, through the awareness of the unity of the things presented to you, begin to understand and at least suspect the possibility that within you rests something that is unimaginable and yet that beckons to you at all points along the way. And I want to start by explaining something to you because this may be important at some point for you. Most of you come to these classes looking for answers. This place is not a place of answers. You make a terrible mistake when you think somehow or other that something I say is the answer to your problem. Nothing I say is the answer to your problem, because without you involved in the realization of the consciousness responsible for that conflict, you're dead in the water. This place is not a place of answers. It is a place that you are welcome to come to, no matter how you may have turned against it, where you will find in your heart stirred again new questions. This is a place to open up questions in you that you have either forgotten or have let be ignored within you by parts of you that don't want to deal with what it is that life brings to you every step along the way. Because, and to the point, there is no moment in life, no disturbance, no troubling thought, no troubling feeling that isn't part of a question that you have yet to learn how to answer. And that's what we're going to look at, is the relationship between what seems to be separate, problem, question, answer. No such thing exists. It is a singularity in the true life, and it is that true life that you, whether you know it or not, have been asking to understand. This is another portal, another invitation to awaken inside of you something that you have tried for 1,000,000 years to get rid of, which is this nagging question about, who am I? What is the real purpose of my life? Why am I here on this earth? And you have been sated, mostly, meaning that you have been satisfied with the question, which is like looking at a menu and feeling full without ever having eaten anything that is served. So let me do something, and I asked you if you brought your best brains with you. I'm going to start with the big picture, And then we're going to go from the big picture into little pictures so that we can start to put together the whole idea. And then we're going to go back to the big picture again so we can make one great circle out of our understanding, which brings us to my request for the image I have of the Ouroboros. Now, most of us don't know what an Ouroboros is. Have you ever seen that before? It is one of many different forms of an ancient symbol of eternity. And it is characterized by the snake in a circle 8, which is the symbol for that which is everlasting, swallowing its own tail. So that the energy, that life, has no beginning and no ending. It is a constant in which something is always being taken in and something is always coming out. And in this particular symbol, you can see the symbol of the sun and the symbol of the moon. So this is actually similar to yin and yang, where we understand that these beautiful opposites that we see as black and white, as life and death, as darkness and light, so we can see that these things aren't disconnected at all, and that each one, if you understand the symbol, is becoming the other in a ceaseless movement. And that ceaseless movement is eternal. Do you understand this? I'm going to come back to this image at the end so that we can look at it in the light of our lessons today. Do you still have your best brain on? God, I hope so. Let's bring up the special writing, please. I'm going to return to this at the end of the talk, but it sets the stage. It's entitled, Answering the Great Question of Life. Please, as best you can, keep your attention here. You can download this from what I understand. Yes, I urge you to do so. It's free. The great axiom, as above, so below. In nature, because every creation is at once incomplete and yet is always being completed at the same time, one can see that every creature is a living need. Where as surely as the rosebud opens its petals to receive the life-giving light for which it asks, each creature is a living question that never stops asking for what it needs to realize its highest created possibility. So that there is a ceaseless reciprocity between creature and creation, where a living need in time is fulfilled by the life of what is essentially timeless. And so it is true for us. We are each a living question that is never apart from the light that answers it. Can you catch any drift of that? Or is it a little too complex at the outset? Who can catch some hands? Who's drifting? We never admit that we don't know, do we? That's like the last thing we ever want to say. I don't know what the heck you're talking about. I will come back to this special writing at the end, and you'll see how everything that we discover today will dovetail into the understanding that this and the image of that Ouroboros, the Ouroboros, is helping us to see all of these images, all of these ideas are connected to a vast, unseen understanding that is stirred in us in given moments. Again, the reason we come here is so that something we don't even know can be stirred in us is stirred in us. And when it's stirred, it's like a little bit of the finest wine you can ever have, because it's such a different sensation, experience, a different impression, a completely different order. And when I have an impression like that, it is the onset of an epiphany. And even if it never formulates itself into something solid, the onset of that insight, of that epiphany, moves me to do what? What am I missing? What don't I know? What is it that I am honestly looking for in this life? Now, those are one set of questions, yes or no. Now, let me bring you into the questions that we ask every day. Somebody laughed. You already understand this, don't you? First of all, some of the questions are self-judgment, yes or no. What's wrong with me? Why don't I get it? What am I going to do about that? Look at that. Look at her. God, she doesn't like me. How can I fix her? When is this pain finally going to go away? When will my mind give me some rest? Because I've been a good student. At least I've tried hard. Why isn't God happy with me? What have I done to make God mad at me? Are these familiar questions, yes or no? In the bottom to life, we're saying, why in the name of God won't you leave me alone to these unwanted moments? Because they come back, don't they? Back and back and back again. Thoughts triggered by conditions bringing up the content of the past struggling to explain to you in terms that it can live with what you need to do to make everything whole again. And around we go, yes or no? Now, I have a question for you. If you'll be honest, will you be honest? When you think about it, has any one of the answers that you've come up with questions like I just asked ever brought you to the end of that mind that asked those questions? Or is it like a closet that you know how you keep stuff that you're never going to wear again because it doesn't fit? You know, you keep thinking to yourself, one day I'm going to get into that size 32 again. Just wait. And now you're 90 years old. There's not a lot of chance. Maybe in your casket you can put those on. Oh, don't go, ooh. Where do you think you're headed? See, you don't want to ask that question. You don't. At no point do I want to ask, what am I actually living for if the end of this life means I wind up like my mother or my father? Or like everyone else that I've seen who's been tortured or destroyed by famine, ambition, war, or whatever it is. Why don't I ask those questions? Why don't I ask those questions, by the way? Because I already know the answer. So when the real question appears, it is automatically met by something that has formulated long ago. And I mean long before you took a body, this consciousness formulated answers to these questions so that that consciousness could continue itself and use the bodies that it occupies to serve its own end. Believe me. All right. Let's pull back from the casket. When do these painful questions appear? When do these painful questions appear? And I had to take the note out because I had too much to cover, but I just want to put it quickly. Did you know there's no such thing as a painful question? How many of you are sure there's painful questions? No such thing as a painful question. There is a consciousness that's in pain and then asks questions. You must understand that because your relationship to a painful question is to do what with the question? Your relationship with the painful question is to do what with the question? Get rid of it. Find a satisfying answer, even though I've had 100 million of these satisfying answers that eventually leaves me still dissatisfied with myself in the moments when life presents these problems that I've yet to resolve. True or not, out loud, please. So when do these questions appear? We've been hinting at it. All day long. That happens to be true because this mind is disturbed all day long. Questions appear, at least that we actually notice that they appear. That's what, thought is sort of a satanic Ouroboros. It really is. It feeds on itself and it produces the sense of something everlasting when the very thing that is feeding on itself is an imaginary identity, giving itself an imagined life over and over again so that it can feel like it's going to go on forever. Except there's one problem with that satanic Ouroboros. Who knows what the one problem is with that? No, it comes to an end when the body drops, when the mind is no longer there, occupied by this person, by your name, trying to figure out what to do with your pain and never succeeding to understand the reason for it, the cause of it. So when this question appears, it's because something has come in and slammed into me. Yes or no? There I was, little Miss Muffet, right, Charlie? On my tuffet, and suddenly here comes something I just don't know what to do with. And when something comes that I just don't know what to do with, it's because that event has come, now be careful, and it has moved in me something that was quite literally waiting to be moved by it. There's no accidental intervention in life. There's no accidental concurrence of celestial currents and divine and physical qualities. They are already married in a world that we don't see, that I've hinted at in the special writing and in the image of the Ouroboros. Now, I'm suddenly, meaning I'm sitting here, I don't have a problem, and then I have a problem. Why? Something has been disturbed that is only disturbed because prior to being stirred, it already knew how that moment should transpire, how you should be, what they should say, everything quite set in this passive personality, in this consciousness, this unconscious nature. And when it is stirred, and it is instantaneously met with something that produces the fear of what? The fear of its discontinuity. What is it that I fear in any given moment other than something has come and is threatening, now careful, the idea or the image that I have of myself that I didn't know I was identified with going into that moment. Still everybody? That disturbance, what we would call a negative reaction, is an inequality, a disparity between an expectation that is part of the conditioning of my life and the consciousness that isn't prepared for anything that challenges that expectation. And when that happens, that consciousness is thrown up into the air, isn't it? And when you're thrown up into the air, meaning suddenly I don't know what's going on, what do I do? Those questions are an aspect, a feature of a mind that is trying to do what? Get its feet back on the ground. Rug was pulled out from underneath me. I need to get the rug back. Follow me? So those moments when suddenly I'm scrambling to put Humpty Dumpty back together again are inseparable from the questions that consciousness asks about the moment. Because that's why it's asking, isn't it? It wants to know what has caused the conflict that it has with someone or something or a moment. It wants to know why that happened. Do you see this? But that's always the wrong place to start. You have to see this. I'm pleading with you. Is that not the only place I know to start when I am in pain? When you do something, they say something on the news, the only place I know to start with is either accusations, some form of blame that I couldn't come up with unless something said, what's responsible for this? So that you can't have an accusation without a judgment, and you can't have a judgment without asking who's guilty. Do you see it? So whether it's accusations or it's some conclusion that I reach, it all boils down to the same thing. And what does every question boil down to in terms of what it has brought for me to consider? Every question, what does it do? Points out there. Every single question begins with the assumption that the problem, the pain, the punishment is being produced by something outside of me. There is no question that doesn't arrive at that conclusion, because by the nature of the question, can you see that? By the nature of me asking what happened, something in me is looking out here for a description, a definition of the event. So that every question I ask begins with an unseen form of separation in a consciousness that is actually responsible for the experience, but that deflects the experience by asking questions. What happened? Why are they like this? What am I going to do now? What does that mean? Do I not, in that moment when the question is formulated by this consciousness, am I not then directed to do what with my attention? Where does my attention go? Outside. Now I have either someone to hate or a new hope. Yes or no? A new plan or a feeling that life is punishing me. And these opposites aren't separated at all because they both belong to a certain aspect of this consciousness that when the answer is formulated, and have you ever asked a question like, what do I do without alerts showing up? You rang, here's your answer. And you have on the spot, or after 42 years of deliberating and killing yourself with stressful anxiety, defeating and defiling the body so that it has no energy, no vitality left in it, you eventually come to an answer. And every last answer to every one of those questions steals from you what you need, the true answer, if you will, in order to grow into who and what you really are. About halfway through. Everybody still tracking? So, review. Underpinning all of these painful questions is what? An uninvestigated conclusion that our life, my life, depends upon finding an answer to what will finally restore me to who and what I've imagined I was until that happened, and now I'm under DEFCON 3. Please? But there's something else in these questions. I'm going to make a transition here. So shift, give yourself a little shock. It's not just in that moment that the question postulates and then proves that the problem is outside of me. But in the very moment that the question is proposed the way it is also doing something that we do not see at all. The question is telling you who you are. Do you see that? What am I going to do? See, you don't see yet. Anxiety, worry. That in the very moment that the question comes along, it validates an identity that is without what it needs to be whole. Just like that. The question is actually proving and enabling the consciousness that poses it to reach a conclusion that without the answer, that by the way, it is going to give to you from itself, that without the answer, you're dead meat. Which means that you now are entirely dependent upon. You must have an answer, because if you don't have an answer to the question that unconscious nature posed, you are going to be deposed from your life and all hell will surely follow. Please? So it's not just telling me what I have to find, and it's not just telling me who I am, but it's also telling me what matters most of all in this moment. Can you see how there is this negative Ouroboros, this closing circle of a consciousness that begins with not understanding the nature of what has disturbed it at all, and in its ignorance, in the darkness of itself, the only thing that it knows to do with the darkness it fears is to figure out what it must have in order to protect itself from the onset of some enemy that has come out of the clear blue sky. And the enemy never came out of the clear blue sky. The enemy is built into a consciousness that is divided and takes itself as its own hero, and therefore must have an enemy that it conquers. And that's what all of the answers that we come up with do, is conquer the momentary question that proves to us we are at risk and somehow or other must resolve the situation if we're going to be able to get on with our life. Now, there's more still. When you have how many of you ever had an urgent question? It's like a silly question, isn't it? You can be driving in your car and someone will cut you off. You'll have an urgent question. Now, you may not know to yourself, you may not know that your mind is going, what am I going to do? Someone calls you, you get an email, and there's a problem. No, what am I? Every last one of those reactions, because it thwarts a desire, creates a new desire. Every last one. And there can be no desire that exists by itself without it questioning, what must I have and do to bring an end to the pain of this desire? Please, do you see it with me? So in that moment, here's the question, and what happens to me? I'm so captured by the question. All of my attention goes where? Where does all of my attention go? It goes to the question, doesn't it? And so that means that I'm completely identified with the familiar urgency in that question. So my identity that was momentarily threatened by the moment is no longer threatened the way it was, because now it's glommed onto a question that promises to bring everything down to earth and get everything reconciled once again. Do you see? Can you see how insidious this is? And the truth is, it's really not. You know, people you see it all. It's really not insidious. This brain is not insidious. We are just stupid. Honest to God. Because when you see something, and you will if you'll work, one day you'll see, you know what? That was going on all the time. It wasn't that I couldn't see it, but something in me didn't want to see it. And the moment you see it, is it confusing? Is it even divine in the moment you see it? Or is it all at once a realization and a recognition that within me already exists the answers to these questions? I've just never stayed with the question long enough for me to come into a living relationship with the answer. Do you see that, yes or no? Now, in that moment, this is key and part of the talk, the urgency of my question that wants to know the answer, that's enough for me. You have to see it. I know you don't. And no offense, I know you don't. Because how many of you have ever had urgent questions? Maybe spiritually urgent questions. What happens to them? I saw yesterday that, and I'll just speak for myself. I saw, and this wasn't yesterday, but I saw that I should apologize to every human being that I ever meet. I saw it. Because they don't see it, but within me, in this conflict, listen to this, in this conflict between light and darkness, in this conflict between what is right and what is wrong, where in truth, understanding the Ouroboros or the truth of life, there is no conflict between the opposites. They're complementary. They serve each other. One gives rise to the next and the next to the other, always giving birth to something. So there's no controversy or conflict in the opposites. But in this consciousness, there's total conflict in those opposites, because I am always identified with one or the other, with the light or the dark, with the up or the down. And because I'm always identified with one or the other, when the other shows up, I'm at war. And because I'm always in that war without having any idea that I am a machine of violence. I am a source of ceaseless conflict that I keep buried because I don't want anybody else to know the truth of my circumstance, because the truth is, I don't know the truth of myself. And why don't I know the truth of myself? Because my questions that appear in the moment when that truth appears bury it. That's why I don't know it. Because my mind works overtime to ensure that the light that dwells in the darkness never really fully reveals the darkness that's there, because if it ever does, the jig is up for that consciousness. Comprehend, everybody? But always, transition now, but always and already hidden in the question, as we've seen, there are two possibilities. What are the two possibilities? Well, the first possibility is that something in me already, and this is true. Do you know that something in you already knows the answer to a question before you're aware of the question? That's a fact. Long before you think to yourself, that's what I'm going to do, because the question has come along. The question appearing out of the content of a conditioned mind can only call upon conditioned answers to resolve it. So that the question seems like it's leading me to a real answer when it's not leading me to an answer. It's leading me back into the dark mouth of that nature that can't wait to relive itself again through my existence that it steals as I circle round and round and round with false answers to what really amounts to false questions. Still tracking? Pregnant pause in every meaning of the word. What's the solution? What are we looking at here? In order to understand and at least suspect that there is another kind of answer to these moments, I must be quite clear and not afraid of seeing what all moments prior to this have produced. Apprentice angel is out on a tour with senior angel. And if you've never listened to my talks, I use the senior angel and apprentice angel as a way in which to allow the students to see what they don't see yet through the eyes of the senior angel, who is once and forever and always not just correcting the apprentice angel, but helping the apprentice angel deal with what the apprentice angel sees. Because just like you and I, apprentice angels if you want, we see certain things, we don't know what in the name of God to make out of that. And because we don't know what to make out of it, a question will come that'll help us make something out of it that's known. And as long as it's known, we're dead in the water. So here they are, and they're flying down. Let's pick a planet. You pick one. Earth. And they're walking around, and all of a sudden, the apprentice angel sees in the distance a kind of a hill, a mountain, and then sort of a weird dark mist, smoke coming out of it, sighing sounds, kind of a unwantable place. And it even smells bad. And he goes, what is that? What is that? Senior angel said, well, I'm glad you noticed, because he took him there for that. And they go to the top of the hill, and they look down into a valley. And the valley, as far as the eye can see, is filled with, and I would need to be able to, I need to be an artist to actually show you this. But have you ever seen those images like from down below with the writhing, kind of malformed creatures? You know what I'm talking about? We don't like to look at that, do we? Why do you think you don't like looking at that? I remember the first time I saw the movie Ghost with Patrick Swayze. Remember that movie? For those of you who did? And then the guy that actually murdered him, and at the end, he gets killed somehow. I can't remember what happens. And then out of the ground, these shadows start to come out. And he sees them. He's already dead. And he starts to run from them. And they grab him and they pull him down. That really bothered me a lot. Does it bother you? God, why would you want to live in fear of anything? Do you know you don't have to live in fear of anything? I mean nothing at all. How will you use your death if you're afraid of it? So there they are, and they're standing on the top of this hill, and they're looking down, and here's as far as the eye can see, gray and black and dark green things that are writhing there on the ground. And the apprentice angel is shocked. He says, what in the name of heaven is that? And the senior angel says, I know you've never seen it, but there's quite a few of them on this planet. What are there quite a few of? Senior angel says, that's the graveyard of forgotten questions. That's the graveyard of forgotten questions. The questions that have appeared that were real and that wanted you to find out for yourself something true about yourself through the appearance of that question, and that were somehow or other deflected or pushed away or somehow or other made to not exist, go away. And that's where they all go, is into that place. Like the graveyard of the elephant's graveyard, there is a graveyard of forgotten questions, and it exists in a way, and it's not outside of us, incidentally. Can we bring up the second key lesson, please? Do download this, or at least write it down. Let me know, or it's already up there. Real questions seek what reconciles them. Living questions seek living answers. Living questions seek living answers. Now, please bring up the special writing. I said I was going to bring it up again, and we'll see if we can't connect it. Answering the great question of life. As above, so below. In nature, because every creation is at once incomplete and yet is always being completed at the same time. I'll stop there for a moment. Is that blade of grass complete by itself? Or does it require the earth and the sun? So that it is in every moment of relationship with the sun that gives it life and the earth that feeds it. Is it not in every last one of those moments an incomplete creature because it requires another form of life to reconcile it, and yet at the same moment that it's being reconciled, it is complete again. It is reborn again to go through the same cycle. Do you see that? The Ouroboros. One can see that every creature is a living need. If we don't see it, what do you think the story of the Good Samaritan is? Every creature is a living need, from the smallest to the largest. Even the galaxy itself is a living creature, and it has its need. Whereas surely as a rosebud opens its petals to the life-giving light for which it asks, each and living creature is a living question that never stops asking for what it needs in order to realize itself. Can you see that a little better now from what we've looked at? You don't think to yourself that here's this little blade of, what should I be? I'll be Frankie the turkey. No, I don't want to be Frankie. We don't see the blade of grass, the flower in the field is asking for what it needs. It's asking for it. It doesn't have a voice. It doesn't speak it. But what it asks for that answers its need is never not being given to it in the same moment of the question. Do you see it? This is the explanation, because I know some of you were stumped. Your Father knows what you need before you ask it. That's what I'm describing to you. How can my Heavenly Father, how can God, the divine, know what it is that I need before I even know I need it myself? How is that possible? I'm explaining it to you. Because it is a singularity. It is the revelation of a perfection being perfected through the revelation of itself and brought into a new realization, which is the furtherance of its perfection, which is the furtherance of it realizing its possibility. Now, the blade of grass can't know its possibility. It doesn't know that it sits there waiting, asking for the light or asking for the rains to come. But you and I can, in fact, know that we are a living question. But there's something in us that prefers death. With God as my witness, that prefers death. Because it would rather shuffle off the moment where that need is there, a need that I've answered 100,000 times through cupcakes and shopping sprees and travel and all the things, my cell phone, revisiting the past that I hate when I revisit it, thinking about the future as a place where maybe I'll get through this. Every last one of those actions of the mind is a way in which it is deflecting the innate question, who am I? What am I? Why am I here? What's the plan? Where do I fit in? What is my true nature? These are the questions that every disturbance brings up in us, but that are lost to us in the moment of the disturbance because there is something in us that would rather deflect that question and produce another one that allows us to come up with a very familiar answer so that I can be reconstituted in the continuation of the self that I know as myself. I know that what I'm saying to you is difficult. But I wouldn't say it to you if it weren't true, and if it weren't that I knew for a fact the possibility. Now listen carefully, because some of you, this is a big problem. When do you want it? Now. How much of you want it? All of it. You want some answer that's going to save you. And the very supposition that there is a single answer that's going to save you is your curse. This moment in time, this point when I finally get that, when I finally am enlightened, oh, thank God, I'm illuminated. No such point exists because there's no such real person in need of what has been imagined and then asked for. Which brings us to another issue. I don't know what I'm going to do with myself if I don't know what to ask for. Isn't your life a ceaseless question? Please, look, I know it is, and we don't even hear it. We don't. How do I wind up? Where are those questions that I started this talk with? What did I do with those things? Why are people so blind? Pretty big question right now, right? World's on the verge of literally collapsing. Why are people so blind? Now, when do I ask a question like that? When I see what you don't. Now, if you saw what I saw, there'd be no more questions. Because we'd all be on the same page. But humanity as a whole will never be on the same page. But individuals can make in themselves a new relationship with these questions that brings into them a holiness. A new relationship with your own mind, with the past. The past that has been brought forward in the form of an incomplete creature. Oh, I don't know if you understand when I say things like this. I just go, oh, please let them. See, you think of like, well, there's an incomplete creature, a blade of grass, but you never think to yourself that your past, that our past as a species is incomplete. And it's incomplete because it refuses the moment where something divine, heavenly, timeless comes in to reconcile it, to let it see that it is clinging to what is causing this conflict. That it is hating someone because it has identified with and carried forward through time some sense of self as superior to others. So that we actually are invited as individuals, but part of a broader collective consciousness, To realize that life keeps presenting what seems to be, and isn't it true? Have you ever been with 5 or 6 people and an event takes place, and maybe it's not wanted by any of them, but every last one of them will have a different question about the event? Yes or no? In fact, I'll have 42 questions about the same event. Why? Because the individual expression of that consciousness as constituted by that person's life on this planet has brought together a very distinct series of energetic bodies, if you will, thoughts and feelings, images and ideas. And the whole of life is never-endingly saying, we need to revisit this, we need to be reborn. That must be changed into something that is part of this eternal circle, that is reconciling itself, instead of separating me from the possibility of entering into that unity, into that unending life. Where what? Where the living question contains the living answer. That's the snake swallowing its tail. That's the eternity. That's the great answer, is that it's not apart from the moment in which the question says, who am I? What am I? What's my purpose? Where's the plan? It's all right there in that moment, right in front of my eyes, but my eyes are not interior, my eyes are exterior. Because this consciousness doesn't know what to do with all of that upset, that movement, that disturbance, that pain. Because there is pain in rebirth. There is a consciousness that clings to who and what it's been and doesn't want to lose any self. It will cling to and then fight with the conditions that prove that it's out of date. How many of you suspect you might be out of date? And God help me, I'm not talking about your clothes. So the longer that into the source of these moments, the easier it becomes for us to mistake the questions we have as the proof that we want real answers. I see this all the time. You see it. You should, especially as students here with me. All the time, people get up in front of the microphone. They put questions on the board. And when you're asking a question, isn't it about as real as it can get? And I'm not questioning that. Because in that moment, I've seen something's been stirred in me. You, Mr. Speaker, have really bothered me. You've really moved something in me that I don't know what you're talking happens to it. Fades away, doesn't it? So that's why I said that you have this mistaken idea that if I have this urgent question, and I understand the urgency in it. By the way, just for your edification, one day you will still have questions come up in you, but you will recognize the appearance of an urgent question as a distraction. You will recognize the appearance of an urgent question, you'll recognize it as a complete hoax. That we How do I keep this question alive? How do I keep it alive? I have to stay within the question. I have to remain within the question. I can't go outside to answer it. Surely I've brought you to a point where there's some understanding of what I'm saying. You know, Rumi says the antidote is in the venom. You've heard that. The answer is in the question. But if the answer is in the question, then it means it's mandating that somehow or other in this great moment of disturbance, that if I am handed over to a question that has an answer promising some pleasure or escape from pain in a time to come, that my whole life has been remanded over to this idea of becoming one day free of this disturbance, because one day I will become the one who understands. God help you to understand. There is no moment where one day you will understand. There is understanding that waits for you to enter into it, because that understanding is the relationship between the question and the answer that appear at the same time. And to know that means that I'm no longer subject to this illusion that something's happened, that this is going away, that they're doing that. It's gone. Bring up the Ouroboros one more time, please. Why is it gone? Because it's a singularity. It never was divided into the way that my mind had divided everything up. And you've had experiences like this. How many of you know the darkest? I can speak for myself. And God knows there has been an unbelievable number of dark moments in this man's life. Thank God. Why would anyone ever say thank God for the moments I didn't want? Because even though it didn't take place at the time, eventually the unity showed up. Eventually it proved that the darkness and the light were not separated, that the want and the not want were never apart the way our mind makes them, but rather they belong to an entirely different order of consciousness that knows what you need before you ask it, because it is producing the questions itself. Everything led to that. I hope I didn't lose you. The moment you don't want has been brought to you for you to understand. Everything in you that doesn't want the moment to be the way it is a remnant of the past needing to be reconciled. And until it does, every answer born of that consciousness will be the continuation of the conflicted nature. But in this image of the Ouroboros, we see what? A symbol of eternity. We see without recognizing it. What do you think the Christian cross is? Passing time, intersecting eternity. The heart of the cross is exactly the place where time and timelessness meet. And in that exact meeting, everything that is in time is reconciled, or at least invited to be reconciled into what is timeless. Not my will, but thy will be done. Thy will on earth as it is in heaven. All of these ideas, all of these symbols are reflecting the exact same lesson if a person can understand it. So next time you have a burning question, what's the next thing that happens to you? What happens? I have to remember the truth. Not identify with what that nature is telling me that's true, that something's terribly wrong and that I have to do something outside of myself so that then I can go get that done and then have to deal with the same consciousness again, only in a different set of circumstances. The answer to the question is within the question. Now, to close, here's what's going to happen. You're going to understand this. How many of you understand this a little bit? But you know, oh God, okay. Wait a minute, what did he say? The answer, the living answer is in the living question. Okay, all right, where's the answer? And already I'm outside of the question. Just like that. Because I have been taken out of the awareness of the fact that the question is a divine disturbance, and the divine disturbance is for the purpose of me realizing the divine answer that is not separate from myself. You must work at this. Questions without a new kind of action are death. Questions without a new kind of action are death. Because when you don't find that new action to take, which paradoxically is actually being passive, isn't it? Instead of being identified with the activity, I'm going to become aware passively of how all of this activity is trying to drive me one more time back through that cycle. Then, and this is what I close with, then you must just do your very best to stay there, not knowing. Recognizing that every question that comes up already has an answer that goes nowhere. Every question that comes up already has an answer that goes nowhere. Why? Because the question's coming out of nothing. The question's coming out of the past. It's it's DOA. How many of you know what DOA stands for? Dead on arrival. Now, just for grins, and one day you'll start to feel all this, the question will be there, and something by the grace of God, and it will be by the grace of God, is going to tell you, DOA. That's your exercise. DOA. Oh, God. What? Oh, God, I'm going to die. No, you're actually where you can live. Because you're aware of your own consciousness, the content stirred into some false activity trying to save itself. And if you stay there, present enough, waiting, watching, aware of the answer is part of the question, all of it will complete itself. You'll see it. And it isn't really completing itself. You at last are complete in your understanding of another order of self that was never not complete and never had to ask questions about what do I do with myself. Got it? Let's take a break, come back and have our Q&A.
Welcome back, everyone. We're getting ready for our Q&A time with Guy. But before we get there, I have a really special announcement for you. As many of you know, we have a holiday banquet here every weekend. We have for 25 years. And it's coming up, and it'll be Friday, December 15th to Sunday, December 17th. And the topic will be to be in the world, but not of it. And you're invited to join us here in Merlin, Oregon, and really soak in this atmosphere that's created when Friends of Truth gather together. And so the weekend will feature 3 talks by Guy and open Q&A discussions. And we have a great holiday banquet on Saturday where we follow a Q&A, and then we have a really kind of a feast, usually some kind of turkey dinner, which is coming up for Thanksgiving as well. But do join us. It's a great time to gather together and meet other people. And if you want to learn more about this, it's the best way is go to guyfinley.org/weekend. It's our holiday banquet. You're also welcome to call us anytime if you have questions at guyfinley.org/contact. And by the way, we will live stream all of these classes. You'll be able to get them for free. But the replay package is something that's is purchasable. If that's a word. Be able to purchase it. And after the weekend, the replays and downloads will include full replays of the sessions, MP3 and MP4. And we'll be given that as access. If you're a Wish member, a Wish School member, or Wisdom School, that'll be free as part of your package. So all of you who are listening, just watch for an email from Kate, and she'll give you more information on this. We'll be giving you announcements about this coming up. Go to guyfinley.org/weekend, and you'll get all of that information. By the way, to buy the package online, it's always a great way to support the foundation, because all of these free classes that we give are supported by the Life of Learning Foundation, where Guy is the director here in Southern Oregon. So do support us at any time. If you can't make that, you can always go to guyfinley.org/donate, and any amount is appreciated to help keep this work going and broadcasting around the world. So again, thank you, and you'll hear more about this as time goes on. So I think that's all we want to say right now. Let's bring Guy back on. And are you ready to go, Guy, or do you have something? Or I see Pat is coming up to the mic. Is that?
Yeah, Patricia has come to the microphone.
Okay.
Hello, my name is Patricia. I have a question, Guy. This may seem silly, but
No,
it came up.
never.
If the questions come up to be reconciled finally to this consciousness, this lower consciousness, why is it important for all that to happen? Because when we die, I'm sure we won't be part of this lower consciousness. So what is the purpose of it? Just so we can live better here, but it takes a lifetime. I just don't understand why we would have to go through this. Is that clear, Sam?
No, I'm sure everybody feels exactly the same way. I don't want to go through anything. That's what you're saying. Why do I have to go through this? I hear that question all the time. I know you know better in one respect, but I'm going to answer it. First, at the root of the question is a very distinct, and I might add negative, I that always appears in the throe of some unwanted moment, which is basically asking without you hearing it, although some people actually say it out loud, why do I have to go through this? I mean, what's the point? Because all I do is go through it again. And I just go through it until I drop the body, and then I don't have to worry about it anymore. Real questions appear out of the body of unfinished business. Real questions appear out of the body of unfinished business. Humanity is an unfinished body, but that has what is finished within it. If it didn't, it wouldn't be disturbed by what disturbs it. It would be natural. But you and I know it isn't natural for us to be in pain, and we're also learning that it isn't natural to constantly deflect that moment, because it does nothing to bring an end to how we defile ourselves, our friends and family, and the world through trying to escape the question with another lying answer, another lying government, another lying religion, another lying whatever it is, social group. It's unfinished business, and it's not your unfinished business alone. Everybody understand that to some extent? Christ, Buddha, every true teacher that ever lived or ever will live will tell you, and I was about to say without batting an eye, but I can't say that's true for myself, will tell you that they will not quit being on this planet, doing what they are given to do, until every human being who can be free is free. Which means that if one has to do this for 1,000,000 years, one will do it. Because that's the right thing to do. Because my brothers and my sisters, my animal friends, all of the creatures do not live outside of me. They are a singularity within a consciousness divided up into infinite units, but all of which share a similar heart and a similar mind. As above, so below. When all is said and done, all must be free or none are. And all must be free begins with me being free and recognizing the root of this captivity. And the root of the captivity is the me that doesn't want to have to go through anything again. Because what's at the root of not wanting to go through this again? What's at the root of it? Anybody? A false I. A me that believes I am different than the condition I'm facing. That's a lie. Over to you, Doug.
All right, everyone, it's time. If you're on GoToWebinar, you can raise your hand in the queue to talk with Guy directly. So just click on that little hand icon. It looks like that. Make sure that's the one you click on. That'll bring you up into the queue. There are no hands yet. So now's the time to raise it, ask a question, or give an impression from the talk, or something you're working on in inner life. Right now, Guy, we do have 3 written questions. We have one that you're aware of that came through the website, and it's from Costas. And he saw a quote by you, either in your talk, I'm not sure exactly where you said, "Be who you are, not what you want to be." And so he says, this is a tough one to agree to, for we've all been in a place, AKA life level, we don't want to be, and therefore, during that time, we want to be a better version of ourselves, not wanting to be who we are in that moment, wanting to increase our life level, therefore wanting to be someone else. This implies we should have accepted that state and not strive to what we want, not strive to be a better version, wanting out of that period of darkness and back into the light. Credit to you, Guy, for helping me with all that, having found your books, but you get my point. If I was to accept who I was then, not doing the work to be someone different, how would I have been? I would have been stuck there.
I hope you listened to the talk today. I just spent a full hour describing to you that you are not who you don't want to be, and nor will you ever be who you imagine you should be. When I don't want to be me, what is it that I don't want? I don't want to be me. I want to be what? Where is the pain of not wanting to be me? Where does it come from? It comes from comparison. It comes from a level of consciousness that is so instantaneously measuring me and judging me by holding me up to some image of myself that it says I should be, that standing there I pale in the light of who and what I should be. And I'm not standing in the light of who and what I should be. I'm standing in the shadows of a nature that is casting dispersion on itself and saying, you shouldn't be like this, you should be like me. And then where does it get who I should be like from? Look, I don't want to be me. I can't stand being me. Where does it get who me should be from? There's a question for you. From me. From the content of the very consciousness that is dissatisfied and conflicted with itself comes a question that says, who should I be? And then it picks a picture out of the content of itself, which it didn't even create, and then says, that's who you need to be. And then I will spend my life trying to prove that answer to myself. And by and large, this is part of the journey. I'll achieve some of it. Have you not achieved wanting to be someone else than yourself? Yes or no? Yes. And then how's it going with that? And then it proves not to be the answer. So for one thing, what you have to understand is that you are looking at this at one level. You can ask questions and answer them. We do it all day long. How do I make a zucchini pie? Question I've never asked myself and never will, but there's a question for you. And when I ask the question, I don't know. I go online, and Papa Google tells me. A whole generation of children raised by an electronic device, instructed, educated by it, with no human contact at all. So I have the question, I have the answer, and I make my zucchini pie, and I live happily ever after in the village of zucchini pie makers. So that's one level, isn't it? And can I make a better pie? Heck yes. I start with taking the zucchini out of it. Of course I can, because I taste it and I go, you know what? This could have used a little paprika, or this could have used a little hot sauce or a little soy. Look, it's my pie. Don't look at me like I don't know what I'm talking about. Some of the students are going, ooh, like ooh, ooh. Parmesan cheese makes everything better. Butter. There we go. And so I can improve it until I'm the only one that likes it. And I'm happy. But then I'm not happy with all the weight I gained. And I have another question. So try to understand as best you can that when I say that one must, where did it go? Where's that question? Tough to agree to be what we've all been, we don't want to be, and therefore during that time we want to be a better version of ourselves. I'm not saying that there isn't, see, this is what gets twisted up. I'm just going to do it. I'm not saying there isn't a better version of you. Because in one world, there can be a better version of you. But when you think of a better version of you, you're thinking of you that doesn't like the version you are. And the real version of you maketh the sun to shine on good and evil alike, perfect as is your Father in heaven. So that it understands it isn't becoming something else, it is growing into what it has always been. And that's quite the distinction if you can understand it. And the only way I can grow into what has always been is to outgrow that which is no longer necessary, that which has served its purpose, and much to the question that Pat asked, is unfinished business. I grow into a new business by dying to the old business. And the old business isn't personal, although it becomes so as we take on this life and our personality forms our experiences and relationships. Over to you, Doug.
All right. Again, you can raise your hand and speak with Guy directly. Irini, I saw your name pop up. I don't know if that was a mistake, but if you'd like to speak with Guy, raise your hand again, and we'll get you in right away.
Yeah,
here's a question.
Hold on, Doug. Hold on. I have a technical question. Something I don't understand. Kate, on my screen, I'm going in and out, fuzzy, not fuzzy, fuzzy, not fuzzy. Is that streamed out that way? That's never happened here before.
That's a long answer, and I can tell you after class.
Okay.
It's some way that way for some, not for others. It depends on their connection, our connection.
I got you. Okay. So we don't really know, but we just, okay, gotcha. All right. So it's not a problem is what you're saying. That's what I want. Dana's at the mic, Doug, and then we'll have the next question you've got.
Good morning, my name is Dana. This whole discussion, especially the last gentleman who wrote in the question, made me think of Insight Timer yesterday when you started off by saying we're under the mistaken belief that we are this one consistent self.
Right.
As opposed to a legion of selves that just take us over and over. I mean, so for me, it's very helpful to remember that, because then that same self doesn't want to improve itself. There is no improving the lower nature. I mean, it is what it is. And so ultimately at our core, we are pure possibility. Whatever higher self, lower self, whatever self will be taking us over or co-opting us. I mean, I don't know if this is making any sense, but I just wanted to come up here and say that because for me, it got me off that train of becoming, or at least when I can remember, of course, but there is no improved version of any self. There's just tons of selves that use this, do its thing. That's all I had to say.
You may not know it, but you hit the nail on the head, and I'll help you with a hammer now, okay?
Okay, thank
It is beyond our present understanding, and there's no question about it, save for, by the grace of God, momentary glimpses of such, that your true nature has nothing whatsoever to do with what you imagine yourself to be or not be. Nothing. That the consciousness that somehow is dissatisfied with itself and imagines what it needs to do in order to change itself changes nothing other than the momentary experience of itself in the world of imagination in which it lives. And it doesn't matter what you change in the world of imagination. Reality is going to come along and give you a healthy shock. And so the clearer that you understand that truth, the more willing you are to accept those moments where you see, you know what? I hate myself. I love myself. I am neither the hatred nor the love of this self, because that wouldn't exist without a self that imagines itself different than me. Does that help? Okay. Over to you, Doug. You're muted.
Most of the time, you'd think that was a good thing, right? So right now,
Ask Barbara.
Yeah. All right. So what I said was we have Isabella in the queue, then Lucy is Isabella written, and then Lucy is in the queue, and then we'll go from there.
Okay.
All right. Here's Isabella's question. It's quite an intro, but I think it's important I read it. Recently, I have felt the continual nudge of a conflict that I know I can't create or make or force an understanding for. So I just stopped and decided to stick with it. However, this conflict then kept nudging until it became a nagging pain where even my muscles and my back were screaming at me. Last night, I decided to take time to meditate, and although I don't see everything clearly yet, a weight was lifted and fear was released. This showed me that I cannot ignore the duality I am in, and I can't give attention to only one side or the other. Like walking on one foot is impossible. I apologize for the long intro, but my question is, what is your spiritual practice that keeps you above the duality and in awareness? This is not possible at all times, right? Can you share what you do to bring awareness in as you follow your spiritual path, besides golf?
She actually wrote that, besides golf. I thought Doug threw that in, but there it is at the bottom of the question. Who is it that's above the moment? Who is it that exists outside of the awareness of the constant interaction between forces that are challenging what was, asking it to be what can. This is the grand illusion of life. Much as I spoke about on Saturday, Insight Timer, and I intend to follow up this week. This illusion of an individual, separate me. We love to give that lip service. We ask questions, the mind, the intellect fabricates solutions, and in its fabrication, the imagination of a me that's one with God and one with Christ and reborn and all the rest of that nonsense that human beings cling to in order to console themselves in times of trouble. There is a bridge over troubled water, a real bridge. The bridge sees the water, it understands the turbulent storm, it understands the rocks, the creatures that scuttle along. But the bridge, the awareness, this capacity we have to be conscious and aware of the content of ourself, doesn't try to be aware of itself. It appears when all other efforts to create a place above the storm are finally seen as useless. Then we simply let go because there is no other opportunity available in the moment other than recognizing I only have one responsibility, and that is to be as present as I can, and then let the cards, the chips, fall where they fall. But I will not pick up the chips. I will not reshuffle. I will not go through any of that. Why? Because even as she said, which was interesting, she said, I was going through a dark night, didn't she? So much so that at some point I had been practicing and then things started to scream at me. Meaning that I was no longer feeding this consciousness, and in order to gain my attention, it starts like they say Mira did with Buddha. They start throwing all the spears and arrows and all the demons showing up right there on the spot. Here they all come. That's it. Where do you think these stories come from? And I succumbed. And then finally I realized that wasn't going to work, duality. So I began to meditate. I went in and agreed to observe everything as best I could. And as I observed, lo and behold, the opposites reach a culminating point. And when they reach a culminating point, something else is born. And when that energy is released, I'm released from my identification with it. And then the waters are still again. All these stories, Christ walking on water, one day you'll understand they're all interior metaphors. Don't try, see. Can a shadow escape the form that casts it? Can a shadow escape the form that casts it? Can the form escape the shadow that it casts? Can there be form or shadow without light? That's your answer. The worst thing that you are afraid of is that you can't escape yourself. That is I'm telling you, without you knowing it, because it's behind everything that we do to distract ourselves. It's every argument, every problem, every person, everything. Mind, think. All of that is behind the attempt to escape an experience that I don't know is being created within me and that I'm identified with because my familiar sense of self is so caught up in it. And then one day, little by little, the worst thing that could possibly happen to you becomes the gateway to the best thing that could ever happen to you. And that is, you see you can't escape yourself. And that every effort to do so is the continuation of the self you don't want. And as you see that, the mind gets quiet by itself. Because what's my mind busy doing all the time? What is your mind doing all the time? Think. About what? How to be, where to go, who to do, what to have. What. It's just endless. Conditions, triggering, content responding, content not sufficient, new questions, new answers, more content. You just see it. And then it's not like it's not like you become stupid. Because that's the fear. Like, if I don't do something not to be me, God help me, I'm going to stay me. And that's how you've stayed you. By not wanting to be you, because you don't know who you are. That's the best I have for Isabella. But I'm happy for you. Keep working. Good question. Good observation. Douglas?
Okay, let's go next to Lucy, Guy, in the queue.
Okay.
Hey, Guy. Hi, everybody there.
Hi, Lucy.
Another nice talk. I really enjoyed it. I had a bit of an insight while you were talking, and I'm not sure I'll be able to exactly describe it, but I'm going to try. So that question, what is the purpose of life? That has been with me since I was really young. Like it's always bothered me. Like, what's the purpose of all of this? Yeah. And in some ways, I can see like it's taken me here, following that. But today when you were talking, I realized there's a part of it too that it's like it's like it wants to beat me up. It's like, whenever things are okay, like, what's the purpose of life? Have I done my purpose? Like, what if I'm not fulfilling my purpose? And then, you fall into comparison, and I can slide into, I can get really depressed. Like, I'm sure I never have. But today I saw, like, in behind it, it's like there's, it's like a fear of not knowing. Because, like, if you it's like it's so desperate to know that it's doing the right thing or that the purpose is being fulfilled that I'm just afraid of just letting it go to just maybe not know.
You're very close, and it's just a question of words. A sleeping human being lives in the perpetual fear that somehow he or she is not going to continue on as they know themselves. It's behind everything. It's the way you look at people. If they're not acting the way you know they should, it threatens the continuity of the part of myself that was awakened in that moment by that relationship. And every moment is stirring the content of myself and measuring that moment according to what I expect that moment to be so that I can continue being me. It's unending, but it can all come to an end. That's the beauty of it. So if you listen to the talk, you catch that tormenting question. God, truth, Christ, life never, ever asks a tormenting question. And it never asks for an answer to end a tormenting question, ever. It sees the torment is a lie. And when you see the torment is a lie, the questions concerning it have to be a lie. And if the questions are a lie, now here's what she's asking, and I'm not going to answer them, OMG, who am I and how am I going to go on? Because all I see in my future is this big zucchini pie. Nothing. Yes or no? So yes, to you, yes. Stay as long as you can, bearing consciously the threats of an unconscious nature that is driven to compel you to pursue its answers so that it can continue to live its life at your expense. It will die. You will see it come and go, much as Isabella was expressing. And as you see it come and go, you realize that you never had to go with it. That everything it was telling you might happen, you'll get to the point where you will understand, let me for myself now create conditions where I agree to meet this, and I'm not going to fix it. I'm not going to do anything about it. I'm just going to go in, like Christ said, don't worry about what to say when you go talk to people. It'll be given to you in that moment. Your Father knows what you need before you ask for it. learn to ask for it in a new way. On we go, Doug.
Right, Guy, we're at the top of the hour, and we have some more questions. So you want to take a couple more?
Anybody in the queue, or are they written questions?
No one in the queue. We have 3 written questions, and we're at 11:04 almost.
Well, let's take one at a time, and if we get hung up, then we'll just beg off and answer the rest later.
Okay.
I know there's some students that want us to come up and speak here, and of course everybody's invited to stay for that.
Okay, we'll take the next written question, then we'll take Carl. And he says, I'm going through a very uncomfortable, uncertain stage in my work, which is more known as a dark night of the soul, which I have realized every aspirant must go through. That is, to lose your life in order to gain it. It's causing absolute hell inside of me, where I find myself listening to your talks constantly and reading your books nonstop every day, up to 5 hours a day, because I'm so uncertain. And this uncertainty doesn't feel natural. I feel trapped in my work.
It doesn't seem like a good place, Carl, but it is. I'll tell you why. First, you're not trapped in your work. You're trapped in the misunderstanding of what your work is. There is no trap outside of misunderstanding the purpose of a moment. The fox blames the trap, for those of you who listened in on Insight Timer yesterday. And the reason you're asking this question is because you know something. You're being asked a question through your awareness of your condition, that something in you does not want to address the real question, because it knows it's going to mean you're going to have to take on another level of conscious suffering, another level of awareness, which is the same. What is the nature of any uncertainty that I have? Anybody? What is the nature of any uncertainty that I have? What's its nature? Anybody? It's that I am identified with something that I think is certain. I can't feel uncertain unless I first felt certain. Yes or no? So here I am, I'm in the throes of this uncertainty. And when I'm in the throes of uncertainty, what do all of my questions ask me to go do and find? Certainty. But now I start to suspect that being asked to go find certainty is somehow or other connected to another stage of uncertainty that I'm going to have to address at some point. And so the answer of immersing myself, and really it isn't so much immersing myself in my studies as it is avoiding what my studies have brought me to learn. Can you follow that? So experiment, Carl. It's always experiment. The question is asking you to experiment, not to walk into a lab where all of the stuff that's bubbling in there, you already know what it is, but to let something new bubble up. Don't console yourself. Don't look for escape in something spiritual. It's a contradiction, isn't it? It's a contradiction to look for a way to escape my spiritual pain by turning to something that consoles me, but that doesn't change the consciousness that's uncertain. I must find a new kind of certainty. That's what the Ouroboros represents. That's what this whole talk was about. There's nothing more certain than the fact that you are a creation and that you have a responsibility and that you are here to reconcile the unfinished business of your father and their fathers and their fathers. Because until all of business is finished, which it is meant to be, why did Christ say it is done? Until it is done, it's not. But if you understand in scale that every moment you see the whole of this, is it not done in that moment? That's the epiphany. And then I have to remember that's where it's done. Let me return to that place of uncertainty where it meets the certainty that produced it. And now there is neither certainty nor uncertainty. They're the opposites that are visited as seen as one. You know what, Doug? Let's hold the others, and I want to leave time for a couple speakers if there are, and I will or we will revisit what we don't get answered the next time we speak. A true school is the Ouroboros. It is always new. It is always making gold out of lead. It is always returning to its natural home by always stirring in the mind of the aspirant the question that had been put to sleep by all of the answers this world has given you to your pain. One day you'll see the answers to your pain are the continuation of your pain, not the solution. And until then, you just have to go through what you have to go through. And if you have the love of truth, doesn't matter. That can't be taken from you. You didn't put that in you. Okay, Doug, we invite everyone who's still online with us to remain. And are there any students that want to come up? Oh, we have one right away. Boy, this is a shock.
Hi, everyone. My name's Karen. I've been working with...
What?
Did you hear something?
Do I hear something? What do you mean, do I hear? What do you hear?
I just thought I heard something. Anyway, what I wanted to say was that I'm sure I hear something.
You still hear it?
I can still hear.
Well, what do you hear?
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday to you, Leah. Happy birthday to you, Leah. Happy birthday, dear Terry and John and anybody else and whoever else is having a birthday today. I don't know. Happy birthday to all of you. Who else's birthday is it today?
Terry's was last week.
Well, that's last week. We missed it. We'll be here again. In the meantime, Leah, what happens when we sing happy birthday to somebody? They get a special present, don't they? Come up. As awake as you can be, that's your present.
That's my wish. My wish? Is that what I'm doing?
It's you're there. I'm here.
My wish is to build this muscle of awakeness, staying awake. And my wish is to continue to seek and understand this world between the opposites, this world between want and not want, pleasure and pain, and to be able to see that. That's my wish.
How about, I'd really like to be relaxed.
Who am I?
Yeah, without that tension.
Mm-hmm.
Happy birthday.
Thank you.
It's a bear to be tense all the time. And when does the tension actually start? My wife said when you're born. In one respect it does, as a creature of the opposites, incessantly being acted on by a will that is timeless on time. There's a constant stress there. But that's not where the stress I'm talking about starts. where does the stress I'm talking about start? In the same moment that I start asking questions about what to do with the disturbance. Prior to the disturbance, meaning at the onset of the disturbance, there is the awareness of a resistance. But when the resistance is then formulated into a question, that's where tension starts. If the resistance is understood, then it is simply turned back in and over to what reconciles it, what created it. That's when you will relax, when you have nothing left to prove.
Hello, my name is Heidi, and I watched my mind complain the past couple of talks about war, about having to look at this topic of war and why people bomb cities and want to stake a flag on a territory that's not their own. And so I looked inwardly for the past couple of weeks to see and feel what within me does that all the time in my relationships in a subtle but interior way that is, obviously war is the exterior manifestation of that. And it is blinding to see how much inwardly this mind would have someone else behave differently and does actually, not would. As soon as anything touches it, it blames something outside of it for how it feels.
It bombs it.
It bombs me, it bombs the moment, and it keeps throwing bombs every time it sees the person, which is proof very similar to the snake eating its tail. And not in a good way. I don't know that image was intended to be positive.
No, I said that would, I just called it the satanic Ouroboros.
Yeah, okay,
Yeah.
I didn't catch that word.
Well, yeah, well, that's.
It does look unnoticed. This self cannot stop giving itself something awful to feed on and then blaming other people for what it's feeding on.
Exactly.
So I'm grateful to see that, and I've been working at home. Wow, I can't believe how little space there is in this mind and body to let anyone move, speak, make a noise, move a knife, a fork. There's just so much.
Yes, yes. Anywhere that I have staked a flag, beware.
With or without knowing it.
Oh,
yeah,
no,
that
absolutely.
whole
No,
entire
that's
kitchen's
the whole
mine.
point.
Yeah.
I don't even know. I don't even, it's not even, it doesn't even occur to me that someone's tone of voice is going to irritate me until that tone of voice is there. And then bombs away.
Right. And to not do that is a lot of work. It really shows me there's some new territory to work on.
Yes, there is. What did Scrooge say to the last ghost? Because the ghost was showing him his grave, wasn't he? And Scrooge had been taken through. He saw his past, saw the future, saw all these things where his life was. He had been a monster who not only didn't know that he was a monster, but who actually finds confidence and strength and self-possession in his monstrosity. And only by the light of God, suddenly he is shown that what he called strength was weakness, what he called confidence was nothing but veiled violence. And then there he is, and he's looking at it, and he says to the last ghost, "Would you show me these things if it weren't possible for me to change them?" Now, the beauty of a movie or a book like Dickens is that in that moment, and the original version was just so beautiful, not the old, newer ones, he loses his mind. And he goes from being you know what? I never even thought of it. That story is Paul on the road to Damascus. A Christmas Carol is Paul on the road to Damascus. Just saw it. Because in that split second, what happened to Paul? He saw the monster. And suddenly he's illuminated and then spends his life working to free others. Forget your religious nonsense. Suddenly, what happens to Scrooge? He sees he's been a monster. And he's given a new life. And then he goes and he spreads the joy of his new life, which is what was so delicious. Go ahead, Tony.
All right, so let's remember that this work is in levels and scales, okay? After that explanation. I recently went for a trip to Florida, and I really had to come up here because I see that it was like an example in real life of what this work explains to us all the time. So my friend and I, business friend, we come out of renting the car, we come out of the airport, it's late at night, and as we're ready to exit, two cars in front of us collide. They just bump into each other. And of course, they're holding us up now, so we start complaining about this situation to each other. Why are people so stupid? I mean, all you got to do is keep going. It's a green light, you know, and we're going on and on and on about this. And as we're driving away, I actually noticed we're getting louder. He's complaining, and then I'm complaining, and we're both going at it. And we're driving probably for about 10 miles. All of a sudden, we see police lights behind us. I see the lights. I said, what's going on? We're getting pulled over. He pulls over, and before the cop even gets up to the window, we're convinced, we're certain, we've done nothing wrong. Why is he pulling us over?
Smugglers.
We're in a black van, by the way.
There you go.
Okay? This cop comes up to the side, a young guy, and I could see he's got his hand on his weapon. I'm thinking, what? I said, Billy, what did you do? I didn't do anything. You're in the car with me. We're talking. I did nothing. And the guy walks up and he goes, before he can say a word, I leaned over and I said, what? What's up? And the little cop looks at me and he goes, gentlemen, I'm not sure if you know it, but you're driving with your lights off. My response to that was, in a moment, I kind of saw everything. I saw myself, I saw all of this, and I cracked up laughing. I swear, I couldn't stop myself laughing. Then my friend starts laughing. The cop is outside, still with his hand on his weapon, right? But I've lost I've kind of fallen apart internally because I'm thinking, oh my God, I see everything we were doing up until that moment.
You're lucky he didn't ask you to take a breath test.
You know, we joked about that because the cop starts laughing, he talks to us, and he realizes, you know, he says, are you guys visiting? I said, yeah, we just picked up this car. It's a rental, this and that. He gives us this, and he says, okay, you know, he says, if I didn't know any better, I would test you guys out, but I get it, okay? You just drive carefully and leave. But for the next mile or so, my friend and I were pretty quiet. But yeah, after that, we talked about it, and I said, did you catch the way we were predators on those people in front of us? We couldn't wait to judge somebody else's behavior as if we're better than they are, you know. And this young man says to us, hey, you're no different than anyone else if you're not aware of your behavior, if you're not paying attention. I mean, we could have caused a real serious accident. We could have hurt ourselves, somebody else. And it's just amazing how it takes so little to send us off.
Yes.
Where we're just not there. I mean, I can see we were not there at all. We thought we were alive, honest to goodness. We were so loud, we were so rambunctious about the whole thing. We're going to have a great time. And it was eye-opening to see that whole thing. But you mentioned the questions today, and I can see the questions throughout the whole thing. You know, why are these people so stupid? Why is this? Why is that? Why are you bothering us? I mean, we didn't do anything.
So in levels and in scale, if I'm not even present to my physical actions.
Exactly, yes.
What in the name of God is going on inside of me that endangers my life even at that level. That's the thing, Tony. That should give rise to a question that you do not want to go away.
Indeed. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Eric, and right now I'm reading Vanity Fair, the book Vanity Fair, and I love it because it's timeless, because it's a revelation of human nature. And in this world of the book, which is Earth, there's not anything anybody does, well, most characters in the story, where there's not a motive. Good deeds, so-called good deeds, there's always a motive behind it for some sort of self-advancement, some huge plan that is going on in their heads. And it actually took me about a third of the way through to start to understand the tone of the book. And it's told in a very humorous way. But the reason I'm saying that is because, partly to connect with what Leah was saying and Guy, is motive, self-interest, tension. That's where the tension is. Mm-hmm. And I would, the wrong kind of tension. And I would contend that, our best, the best moments, if I could put it that way, are when we are serving something greater than ourselves. It does not happen very often yet for me, but I'll say this one little example, is when I was back there at the computer, there was 5-10 seconds of this feeling of being here, serving something. And then it went back to, well, am I doing a good job? Am I doing it right? Gosh, I hope I don't make any mistakes. And I know that those 5-10 seconds, I could tell there was no tension in it. The same kind of self-concern tension. And so, yeah, that's it.
Come on up, Katie. Just to underline some of that. There's no tension of an unconscious nature in double attention. When you see beauty, there's no tension in you. And you have an epiphany, which is always a sudden awareness of the play of the opposites. There's no tension in that.
Good morning, my name is Kate. I think somewhere in the talk, Guy said, that you don't really want, most of the time, you don't really want the answer to the question, you just want the feeling of the urgency of the question itself. Does that sound right?
That's perfect.
But really resonated immediately with me. And I realized that anytime, when something happens out there, and Kate instantly goes like this, whether she physically does that or just interiorly does that sort of bracing, that's exactly that, an example of that. Mm-hmm. That's something coming up, questioning the moment, giving me this literal sensation of urgency. And that's like such a perfect clue to just doubt that right away. Just come to a stop as best I can and feel that feeling, like fully feel it. I think part of our work is to fully feel as best we can when we come back to ourselves, whatever it is, in that moment, And I had a connection, too, with what Eric just said, but it's, of course, gone out of my mind. I just like that intention. I like setting that intention. You know, to recognize the fact that in those moments that there isn't really any interest whatsoever in being open and letting life show me the answer. It's really just this never-ending loop of self-feeding, of self-love of Kate, essentially. You know, it's just a self-love infinity symbol like we saw with the...
A Katie Ouroboros.
Yeah, Katie Ouroboros. Let's put that in the dictionary.
Good enough. Remember your work. I'll see you Wednesday.